Welcome, everybody. I've got my good friend, Dr. Laura King, who is Chief of Police with the McHenry County Conservation District. Here's our guest today. We'll be talking about leadership. Laura, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me, Jamie. Very excited to be here.
Awesome. So I want to start off. I know you've been in the realm of leadership. You've been practicing it. You lead leaders, and you've taught in related areas. What's a leader? How do you define it?
Well, I think a leader is everybody and anybody who's trying to make positive change in this world. So it doesn't really matter what your formal status or position is. If you want to help people, if you want to make this world a better place, if you want to move towards success and progress in your life, you are a leader. You're a leader of yourself. Often you're a leader of your friend group, your family, and then eventually you can be a leader within your work organization. Now, whether that's in an formal or informal position, it doesn't really matter. And I think one of the things that's really served me well over the course of my career is somebody told me that very early on. Whatever position you're in today, conduct yourself like you are in the position that you want to be in. And for me as a new officer, I find this hard to believe, but I was arrogant enough in the interview to say, if you hire me in 20 or 30 years, I may be your chief of police. And if you don't hire me, I'm going to be chief of police somewhere else. And in hindsight, I feel embarrassed by how bold that statement was, but I know that was that messaging. I knew from the day that I was hired that someday I wanted to lead a police organization. And that's largely in part because of who my dad was and how his experience was with a law enforcement agency. And I really kind of felt like the leadership really didn't help my father optimize and reach his full potential. And so I wanted to be something different. I wanted to make it better. And so I walked in knowing someday I wanted to be chief of police. So not only did that have me conduct myself in a certain way and try to inspire and motivate others around me every step of the way, but it also helped me on a path where questionable conduct was never even an option for me. I was on a very high road with morals and ethics and values, as we should all be, but there was never even any room for antics or questioning because I knew that could potentially compromise where I wanted to be. So I think a leader is an optimist. I think a leader is a motivator. I think a leader is a friend, a mentor, a coworker. And I think a leader is somebody who's very, very self-driven and has a plan on where they want to go.
That's great. Thanks for that. Been really thinking about definitions of leadership and how to most make it of value. And I think it's less about arriving at the perfect definition and more that each person, for wherever they're at in their journey as a leader, has kind of a clear idea of like, what is it that I'm doing? What am I both striving towards, a bit like you talked about, of just moving towards that career objective, and also like the type of leader that I want to be. What is it? Is it as simple as moving people from point A to point B? Is it values overlaid on it? Are we talking good leadership versus bad? Again, I'm less concerned, almost like they say, of not so much the destination, but the journey. I want each person to think about how they see leadership, how they think of what it means to be a leader. If you were talking to someone that is in any industry or any line of work that's just starting their leader journey, what would you want to say to them in about a minute if you had 60 seconds with them?
Yeah, I would say find the people in the world who you think were an inspiration and study their lives. And so, the people that really accomplished something, the people that held themselves to a high standard, the people that didn't have any tarnish, that moved organizations, sometimes civilizations, right, to that next level, and study those people, because a lot of times the human story has such personal impact, and leadership, it's really a universal strategy. So if you want to be a great leader and you're in this, silo of a professional experience, you don't only need to look inside of that silo of your professional experience. You can look to great leadership anywhere, faith-based leaders, business leaders, civil servants and activists. I mean, you can find quality leadership anywhere. But what I would say is become a student and an advocate for leadership in your own life.
And I love your background. I love the artwork, and I think it's birch trees there. But I also see President Lincoln back there. Is he one of those people that you've looked at in that way as a leader for inspiration?
He absolutely is. And the quote at the bottom of that picture says, make sure your feet are in the right place and then stand firm. And I use that as kind of a mantra and an affirmation, because so many times when you're trying to do the right thing, you will encounter resistance and people will try to push you off of doing the right thing for the easy thing, the convenient thing, sometimes the cost-effective thing. And so, yeah, he absolutely is one of those leaders. So is Dr. Martin Luther King, Jesus Christ, of course, a great leader, right? Mahatma Gandhi, even more recently, Colin Powell, I thought was a great leader. I read and studied his life, so there are so many different leaders from so many different places. And just by, reading the stories of people and what they went through and how they conducted themselves, they'll share their successes. They will also share their struggles, and you can learn a lot from both.
Yeah, that's awesome. And speaking of stories, would love to hear again. Of course, I've heard it, but for our listeners, a bit about your story. And if you don't mind, just take a few minutes, 5 minutes or so. What's the tale of Laura? Who's Laura? What's your story?
Well, so I am a generational police officer, as I said, and I really kind of got into police work because I was looking for a job where I would have the ability to help other people. And what I used for a standard definition of that was the model that was set by my father. He was a police officer in our community, and he was constantly involved, outreaching, helping with the schools, neighbors, kids at school would say, oh, this happened and your dad was on the call. And I was just really so proud of his service. And when I explored different areas for me to spend my professional time, nothing really seemed like a good fit. Now, while my dad was providing a great service to the community, unfortunately, it was having a little bit of impact on our family unit. And my dad, over the years, became a little bit disengaged and a little bit curmudgeoned, right? He's a little kind of was like an angry policeman for a while. And I didn't want to become that angry person. And so I once asked my dad when I was very young in my career, did you ever take a promotional test? And he said, no, I never did. And I said, well, why not? And he said, I never took the sergeant's test because you couldn't pay me enough to be one of the a-holes that I worked for. But, of course, he used more colorful language. And I was just like, wow, I have to get into this leadership space, because they treated my father like he was filling a time slot, right? Like he was a machine, like he was a worker. And they really kind of missed the human element. And so I got into police work, and that's how leadership was for me also. I got into a completely different police agency, but there was still the drumbeat of this paramilitary organization. And there was a lot of disrespect, sergeants like screaming at me in roll call and throwing things at officers and just really non-respectful, non-professional, non-acceptable behavior. And I wanted to make things better. And I knew there was the option to complain and throw a fit and do it that way. But I kind of took a silent high road where I just took it all in, and I probably tolerated more than I should. And I'm not always proud of that, because I think sometimes what you accept and you tolerate, you becomes the norm. So in hindsight, there might have been a couple times when I would have used my voice in a different way, but I was just like, I got to get there. I got to get in that position. Once I'm in that position, I can start to make a change. And so I did. I had a lot of failures along the way. I had a lot of setbacks. Somebody who comes in and starts conducting themselves like like they want to be the boss someday. That's not always well accepted. There's people that have been sitting in those seats for 20 and 30 years, like, who the hell do you think you are, little girl? Was the feedback that I was getting. And, I was just like, well, okay, I guess I'm going to have to prove myself.
Mm.
And so I just continued on. And I was very fortunate. I moved up the ranks in my home agency. I retired out of my home agency with 20 years of service as a division commander. And I moved on, took a chief investigator's position with our state's attorney's office. Worked that position for a couple of years, and then the chiefs of police position was over here at the conservation district, and I came on board. So what I'm most proud of is the work that I've done here with the team at the conservation district, because we really kind of worked together to create a culture of wellness. I got here and nobody was happy, and they weren't happy that somebody new had walked through the door, and everybody kind of had this attitude like this job stinks, and I was like, well, what would it look like if this job was amazing, like awesome, like you couldn't believe how great it was that you got to come to work each day. And we just started brainstorming and really kind of talking about what that would look like. And then we baby stepped it. We just did one little right thing, the next little right thing, the next little right thing. And eventually we were really able to build something great. And I know you know this, Jamie, but all your listeners may not. Our agency was selected in 2023 as the national award winner for the Destination Zero Officer Wellness Program. So I couldn't be prouder of that and what we've created here as a team. And so we've really kind of proved that police work does not have to be, an angry, pissed off profession where everybody's barking at each other all the time. You can actually come to work and respect the community and respect one another and do a great job together. And it can be a great place to be.
Well, if you would tell the listeners a little bit more about some of the things with what is Destination Zero and what are some of the other efforts that you've been involved in or are currently involved in regarding wellness, mental health, suicide prevention, things like that.
Sure. So Destination Zero is a program run through the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund. And the intent of the program is to keep names off the wall in Washington, D.C. They want as few officers to die in the line of duty as possible. And they've got several different award categories. I believe there's 5 overall, 4 branches, and then a comprehensive award. So there is officer safety. I think there's a traffic safety. There's officer wellness. There's one other one that I'm probably forgetting about. Then there's a comprehensive program. And it's all about the police agencies becoming part of the solution and realizing that there are a lot of risks associated with this profession, but we don't have to accept those risks as unmitigated reality. There's actually things that we can do to prevent, to reduce the likelihood and to kind of create a better place. And then they have a huge resource page on their website where all of the programs, all of the finalists, all of the award winners, their programs are shared and become a clearinghouse of resources that are absolutely free to anybody who is looking to maybe put something into effect at their department to make this job safer for their officers, to make their officer wellness a different level of priority, to create a comprehensive approach to making sure that we're taking care of people who are doing this incredibly dangerous job that we ask them to do. So the Destination Zero program is there. It's a free resource for everybody. And I can't believe still that we won, but I'm so happy about that. I also work in both the Valor for Blue program and in the Safe Leo program, which is suicide awareness for law enforcement officers. And in those programs, I specialize in mental wellness, psychological resiliency, and suicide prevention. And we go out and again, absolutely free of charge, grant funded, free resources for everybody where we will come to your agency. All you need to do is provide a room and some attendees, and we will come out and we will give very high quality, vetted, grant funded programs delivered by law enforcement practitioners. And the intent of the program is to make police work safer, make it safer for police from a tactical perspective, make it safer for police from a roadway perspective with the NLERS program, make it safer for police from a mental wellness perspective with the suicide awareness, the Safe Leo program, and also the newest program in that initiative is Safer Together, where it really talks about community engagement and how communities where police have healthier relationships are actually safer communities, not only for the people that live in the communities, but also for the police that work in the communities. So it's a really great program, and I'm thrilled to be part of it. But anything we can do to help this profession be as safe as possible and keep those names off the wall.
It's awesome. Thanks for all you do in that, Laura, and of course, congratulations on the award. That's really cool. That's really cool.
It's really the team, right? The team did the
Yeah.
work. I mean, we built the program together, but like anything, if people don't do it, right, you can have the greatest programs in the world, but if it doesn't actually become part of your culture, if people aren't actually working the program and accepting the program and adopting the program and making it part of their lives, then it's not worth anything. So it's the team did all the work. I'm so proud of them.
That's awesome. And speaking of the team and where you all work on a daily basis, particularly for those who maybe are listening and are in Illinois or the general greater Chicago area, can you tell us a little bit about the conservation district? Like, what is it? What do people do there? I've had the chance to be there a couple times, some beautiful land out there. Can you just tell folks a little bit about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are a special district located in McHenry County, Illinois, and we protect over 26,000 acres of open spaces, natural areas, green spaces for the use and enjoyment and benefit of not only the residents of McHenry County, but of course, all of our visitors as well. So we really kind of focus on our water, wildlife, and way of life, because we know that people's quality of life is better when they have green spaces available to them. It helps to protect the air quality, it helps to protect the water quality, it helps to protect the biodiversity of our natural environment, which is essential for a million different scientific things that I won't talk about right here. But we have hundreds of miles of hiking trails, we have hundreds of miles of multi-purpose trails where you can, take a bike, or take a walk, or meander down. We have rivers and streams where you can paddle. We've got lakes where you can come and fish or canoe. And so we've got a great deal of recreational opportunities. Most of them are focused on the natural environment. We have also a whole educational division where we run summer camps, educational programs, a wide variety of different things throughout the year, with our intention being to connect people with these beautiful natural places and help them understand the importance of the natural environment and how it can enhance the quality of life.
You mentioned a bit about the health in general, like you just said, quality of life. And I know you are very close and well studied on the topic of wellness and in mental health in general. Can you talk a little bit about that connection of green spaces and getting out there for both people that are local to you, but just in general who may not have noticed conservation land near them, or parks or opportunities, and what's good for me about going out into nature?
Sure. So that's a really complicated question, right? I'm going to do an overview here because I know we have limited time. So there was a huge initiative started a couple of years ago called Nature RX, where people were realizing that, every time people felt, depressed or anxious or stir crazy or whatever, they were going to mental health professionals, and they were seeking options. And a lot of times the mental health professionals were like, you need to get outside, you need some fresh air, you need some sunshine, you need some exercise. You're spending all of this time indoors, you're not moving your body, you're throwing yourself into an escape, a virtual world, a video game, a TV program. And it kind of became something, especially when dealing with children who were struggling from some of these mental health diagnoses that we hadn't previously seen in children their age. And there was a big group advocating for remember when kids used to go outside and play
Mhm.
and get super tired and burn off all their energy, how maybe we didn't have some of these behavioral problems, we didn't have some of these same situations. And so what we know about the green space is just getting outdoors. It increases a lot of the hormones in the brain, just kind of a natural process that happens, but specifically serotonin and dopamine, which are mood regulating hormones. They're happiness hormones. They are hormones that help us feel better able to manage stress, better able to make decisions, better able to execute and follow through. So we also know that time spent in silence or disconnected from our electronic devices is essentially important to mental wellness for human beings. This is kind of how we're designed. We think about the world today and all of these different electronic devices and things that are constantly bombarding us with information. We have to remember for tens of thousands of years, humans evolved without that constant mental stimulation, and they spent time outdoors. And our bodies, our brains they're almost like a computer in some way. If you have a computer and you're working, you never turn it off, you never hit save, you never reboot, right? At some point it starts glitching and it's not working the way that it's supposed to be. It needs that time for the reboot to save it, to kind of rest, and then it kind of starts again, all refreshed, and everything works again. Well, there's a lot of science that shows that time out in nature can actually provide you with that. In addition to this time spent in silence, there is something that's very popular now called forest bathing, and that is going to an area where nature has completely surrounded you. The tree shade has covered you overhead. Usually you have leaf fall and like a biomat under your feet, and you're surrounded by plants and animals. And when you are in this space, forest bathing, your heart rate naturally lowers. Your respiratory rate slows and deepens as a natural side effect. And the air temperature is actually cooler in that area, which also can have a calming effect on the body. So forest bathing is becoming more and more popular. And I was at the National Parks and Recreation Conference last year, and they gave this big presentation on forest bathing. And I was with my executive director. I turned to her and I said, we have that. That's like, we have to tell them, we have to tell everybody that we have that, because people are paying thousands of dollars for these, vacations to take them to a place to forest bathe. And really, you could just go to
down the street.
a recreational area and find a tree covered area with a rock that you can sit on, or just stand, or maybe there's a bench there, and just sit for a while, surrounded by nature. Psychologically, they say that it also, being out in nature, it kind of reminds us that we're not the center of the universe, and that our problems are temporary, right? And they're manageable, and they too will pass, but we are really part of some much bigger thing, much larger system. And so now, if you get out there and actually walk and move your body and get your heart rate up because you're getting cardiovascular exercise, then the benefits are even more pronounced, because nature heals. And that's just a scientific fact. What man destroys, nature heals. And once we really wrap our minds around that and start to begin to understand that, what we will realize is that any damage that has been done to us by man, by our environment, even by ourselves through self-destructive behaviors, has the potential to be healed if we slow down and reconnect with nature. And this is nothing new, Jamie. I mean, I don't remember the year, it was 18 something that Henry David Thoreau wrote Walden, like 1890 something, right? Life is so fast paced back in 18 whatever, that he's got to go to Walden Pond and spend 2 years, 2 months, and 2 days detached from how busy society was, I mean, it's just so crazy that here we are all over again, just rediscovering nature, when Thoreau went through this over, 100 years ago.
Well, it sounds almost comical when you describe the 1800s as busy compared to us walking around with our iPhones. And
I know, but this is, if you read on Walden Pond, this is what he went through, right? He felt so overwhelmed by how busy his life was that he in order to find his sanity, right, to find some respite, he went to that place and he found all of this healing.
Yeah.
And I love Thoreau. I have up on my wall, right? It's on that wall, so you can't see it, but you know, I've got his picture too. And it says, live the life you've always imagined. And you can, no matter what field you're working in, no matter what career you have. If you want a good, positive, intact family unit, you can have that. If you want a positive work environment where you're moving through, where you're leading people, where you're making things better, you can have that. If you want to help do work to heal the planet, like, you can have that, but you have to be very intentional about the steps that you're taking. And that's why I'm such a big proponent of coaching, because that's the type of thing that can really kind of help you get there. You know, we are great at thinking about what we want, but we're not great at doing the things that'll get us there if there's not an accountability measure built in.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I want to pull the nature thread for just another minute and tie it into leadership. So you're describing this getting outdoors, sometimes for sitting quietly, perhaps for actually movement and walking and exercise. How does that make me a better leader?
So I think it gives you some time to marinate, some time to put thoughts into perspective. And here's a great example. Somebody comes to you and they say something that triggers you, right? For lack of a better word, right? They say something that upsets you. It's one of those pet peeves that you have, and they just kind of bring you something, right? And you want to react a certain way. Right? You just do, like, you've dumped adrenaline and you've got this, you know, you've got your ego in there and you want to react a certain way. I promise you, if you build in a 20-minute walk before you talk to that person, your reaction will be completely different. And probably while you're on that walk, what you'll realize is that there's no reason for you to overreact. This person is coming to you with a thought or idea. They may have said it in an insensitive way, or they might have misunderstood something, but there's probably a very clear way to connect together. But the evolution of the human being, whether it be for personal growth, whether it be for building psychological resiliency, whether it be for mental wellness, whether it be for physical exercise, there needs to be positions or moments of intense work and rest and recovery. And so we know what that work and rest and recovery looks like for our physical body, right? We know what it looks like to go to the gym. We know the difference between when we're doing a mediocre workout and when we're crushing it, right? And it's terrible in the moment, but we know it'll be great a couple days from now because we know we've made some progress. But if you keep doing that over and over again without days of rest and recovery, you're just going to injure your body, and your body's going to get weaker instead of stronger. This is the same thing for leaders. But leaders, you know, unless you're, you know, building a pyramid, you know, it's not the heavy lifting that we're doing. It's the psychology, it's the managing of persons, it's the execution of highly, you know, complex situations and bringing them to life. It's running and creating programs. It's making connections. Whatever it is that you're doing in your leadership role, leading teams, leading people. That's a heavy psychological lift. Yeah. And if we don't build time in to rest and restore and rejuvenate, if we don't build time in to think, you know, we're failing ourselves. And a lot of the great writers, like going all the way back, I mean, they talk about the importance of building in that time to think. Well, I don't know about you, but if I try to think and I'm in an environment where there's, you know, my cell phone and my computer and my office door, right, my thinking gets disrupted. In fact, they say in the modern day office environment, there's a disruption on average once every 7 minutes. Well, disruption after disruption after disruption, it's like if you were trying to sleep and every 7 minutes, somebody woke you up, you know, like, you're just not getting the restorative part. You're not getting to that deep restoration, that deep sleep. Well, we also need to get to deep thought. And deep thought doesn't happen on the surface, and it doesn't happen in 7 minutes. And so we have to build that, thinking time into our days. And there's no better place to do that than out in nature, because you've removed yourself from distractions. You've connected yourself to the life force of everything that's around you. And you've reminded yourself that this is a big, beautiful world, and you're just one of the many moving parts. And somehow, right, that makes us realize we're connected in ways that are kind of beyond what we normally understand. And it brings us peace, and it brings us clarity.
I know you know a great deal about the physical and brain connection, and I'm curious if you could briefly tell the listeners about what happens when you get that biomechanical movement. And I know you're EMDR certified and all that, but talk a little bit about what's happening kind of behind the scenes, if you will, when we get out and walk when we're stressed, or we walk when we're trying to solve a problem.
Sure. So a lot of times we're really caught up in our prefrontal cortex, right? Which is the place of logic and memory and language, all of the higher order human functions. And so when we get out and move and do kind of more basic tasks, and a lot of the things that we do routinely as part of survival, like breathing deeply and walking, we're using the different part of our brain. And so also, nature can really invoke some of the creative parts of our brain, right? As we start to see things and wonder about things and are curious about the things. And so that bilateral brain stimulation, anytime we can create a situation in our lives where we are intentionally moving towards or interjecting bilateral brain stimulation, what we are doing is we are helping the brain work the way that it's designed to work, because the brain is not designed to work in silos or in hemispheres or in sections. It's designed to work holistically, kind of like the muscles of our body, right? We know we could go to the gym, we could bicep, 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 but that's not going to get you to a full state of fitness. Well, we could also sit behind our computer and type, right? But that's only going to take us so far unless we're using those other parts of our brain as well. And so EMDR is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And what it does is it creates stimulation in each of the hemispheres of the brain intentionally, either through like eye movement, light stimulation, audio stimulation, or tactile touch stimulation. But you don't have to do EMDR to get the healing. Every time you walk, right, you take a step with your left foot, your right brain is stimulated. You take a step with your right foot, your left brain is stimulated. Anytime you do anything like that, you are creating bilateral brain stimulation. In addition, there are some brain exercises that you can do where you are intentionally pulling in creative answers into an otherwise non-creative situation, where now you're forcing that creativity in the brain. And so what the beauty of all this is, Jamie, is in neurogenesis, right? Neuroplasticity, and the creating of new neural pathways. So neural pathways are kind of like software programming for the human brain. So think about your computer. I've got an Apple phone. My husband has an Android phone. They don't always really talk to each other, but my mom has an Apple phone, and me and my mom never have any problems sending texts, sending videos, sending PDFs. Our calendars sync, everything works, right? Well, when you create these neural pathways in your brain, it's like you're putting a software program in your brain. And so when you do that before you need it, when you do things like create that bilateral brain stimulation, which is logical brain working with creative brain to problem solve, really is what the bilateral brain stimulation is. It's bringing the two hemispheres together and making sure that they're connected. Well, what they say about neuroplasticity is what fires together wires together. So that means the more often you do it, the more that creates a circuitry. It creates like a highway system in your brain so that the brain knows how to work together really, really well. And it doesn't have to kind of figure it out in the moment. Well, if we can create healthy habits by taking time to think when we walk, or being creative, playing a musical instrument, challenging ourselves with math problems, learning poetry while we exercise. Like there's so many different ways that we could do this. But the more we train our brain to function like that in times that are not super stressful, the more fluid we are going to be able to be, the more gracefully we're going to be able to execute our professional responsibilities, because our brain's not going to be stressed out, because that creative side and that logical side, right, they're used to firing together, and now you've got those neural pathways already embedded in your brain. Like, I don't just kind of think this is a leader, I believe in this. I literally have my husband and my small children, we do these brain training exercises with this coach that I hire, who usually works with professional athletes, and we are doing neuroplasticity training, right? We are training together as a family through all of these exercises, because if we can get all of our brains on the same software system and get us all kind of thinking and problem solving and having like a synchronistic approach to those things, how much better are we going to get along living in the same house together?
Right. That's awesome.
Yeah, my kids don't think it's awesome, but it's going to be awesome for them someday.
They'll get there.
They're like, Mom, you're the weirdest mom of any of the moms that we know. And I'm like, I know, honey, someday it's going to seem cool.
Someday you're going to thank me. Someday you're going to
I know right now it doesn't seem great.
Oh my gosh, that's great. Yeah. If you had, and I've asked you this type of question a few times, but if you had about a minute to talk to someone who's just moved into leadership from maybe an individual contributor role, and the context is, I see this over and over, where the idea that taking time to think, and as you know, I call it just staring out the window time, right? To just stop doing all the tasks, stop driving towards the objective. And it's a foreign concept for many new leaders, that's actually part of their job expectation now. If I was coming and working for you for the first time, had just moved into a leadership role, what would you want to say to me about the importance of setting aside time to think?
Just that it's essential, and that it will exponentially speed up your ability to adapt and understand and acclimate to the new responsibilities of your position, and it will help you be able to navigate the stressors that you're encountering. I literally have a calendar that breaks the hours of the day down in 20-minute segments. I stole it from somebody offline, from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. and I go to bed at 8:30, so I don't use the second part of the calendar, but and I have to build thinking time in there. And like I said to you, I shared this with you, this is my truth. It's very, very hard for me in this office, in my work environment, to just say, hey, I need 20 minutes. The phone's going to ring, the email's going to beep, somebody's going to knock on my door. But if I get my butt outside and I go for a walk for those 20 minutes, I have my time to think. No, you can do it wrong. You can get on the phone. You can put a podcast in, which podcasts are wonderful to listen to. Okay. But not during your thinking time, right? Because that's different. That's input time. You need digestion time. Right? You need time to really digest everything that's been uploaded into your brain and just kind of let it marinate and settle and make sense and kind of filter out. So I would say get it on your daily schedule, and anybody that tells you it's not important, that doesn't really understand yet, and don't, anytime you plan on wasting trying to convince them, you should spend thinking instead.
Yes, it's good. It was good. I wanted to ask too, we've got a lot of small business owners and small business topics on the podcast. And I know that in addition to your day job, you have a variety of other pursuits and ventures. You're an author, published a book not too long ago. Can you talk to the audience a little bit about some of the challenges you've had in running kind of your own work, your own business, as you have a full-time job?
Yeah. So, yeah, I can talk about that. It's a little bit multifaceted. So I do have a consulting business, and kind of part of that consulting, I really kind of focus on motivation and wellness and optimization. I do some nutrition counseling. That's where my writing also comes in, because I write in that venue. I also teach for the community college, and I have 8 rental homes that, and I manage that portfolio and the renters and all the human dynamics of that business as well. My brother's a partner in that, and so is my husband. So we work together, but and then I have my full-time job, right? And then I do all the advocacy for mental wellness and psychological resiliency and suicide prevention. So it's really a lot. And people say all the time, like, you're so busy, you must not sleep. Like, you must not have time to think. And I am like, stop, okay? Listen, this is so important. I used to be that person. And I was an unwell version of myself. And I went to the doctors because I felt so sick. I couldn't figure out what was going on. I was never happy. I felt exhausted all the time. I couldn't sleep. It was crazy, right? And the doctor kind of showed me what I was doing wrong. And the main point to all of it was I was spending no time sleeping, and I was spending no time thinking. I was sleeping for 4 or 5 hours a night because I was doing shift work, and I thought, well, that's what I have to do. And then I was just constantly busy and going all day. I really had to reset, and I had to take a pause and take a hard look at my life and say, okay, if I want a life where I'm able to enjoy my children, where I'm not stressed out all the time, where I'm able to do all the things that I want to do with energy and conviction, and I don't feel depleted at the end of the day, what would that have to look like, right? What would that look like for me? And I knew an essential part of it was getting enough sleep. And I knew an essential part of it was building in time for silence, right? That thinking time into our lives. And so I started a meditative practice, and I made a different commitment to sleep. Now, neither one of these things were easy, okay? And they were a journey. They were long journeys. The meditative practice, I tried, online classes, YouTube videos, guided meditation CDs. Okay, I'm kind of like dating myself. I had a far infrared sauna. I blocked myself in there, and I couldn't figure meditation out on my own. I read every book by every meditative expert. I actually had to find a temple, and I started working very, very intensely with these wonderful Buddhist monks who helped me understand that meditating is not being free from thoughts, it's being free from an emotional reaction to your thoughts. And that it's okay to think things, but if you're in a calm state, or if you're maintaining a calm state, it's not okay to react to those things. And then the sleep thing was equally as difficult, but it didn't involve any monks, okay? But what I did was, on my phone, I set, okay, I know what time I have to be up and moving in the morning. It's non-negotiable because I have a job. So what time do I need to go to bed in order to make that happen? And the answer was 8 o'clock at night. Okay. And so I set an alarm on my phone, a bedtime reminder that says, hey, 8 o'clock at night, it's time for you to go to bed. And for weeks I looked at it and I was like, well, that's ridiculous. I got all this stuff to do. But then somehow in the evolution of things, Jamie, I would see that reminder and I'd realize that the things I was doing after 8 o'clock at night, they weren't important things. They weren't productive things. And in fact, I was barely getting anything done at all because I was so fatigued. I was just kind of dragging myself through the motions. And so very, very slowly, bad habits started to fade off. I stopped having the TV on. I started cleaning up the kitchen and everything right after dinner and not leaving it until after the kids were in bed because, and so I made some adjustments. And at some point I started going to bed at the same time as my kids. And so my bedtime's not 8 o'clock anymore. It's 8:30 now. But I mean, my whole entire household goes to bed at 8:30 at night. And we sleep for 8 hours. We are up in the morning. We are ready to go. And I would never have the energy to do all of these things if I didn't, number one, protect my sleep. And number two, protect some time to think, to meditate, right? To protect some time for silence in my life every single day.
So like in listening to you lay it out, it's almost counterintuitive because especially when we're in the
Right.
mindset.
More sleep means you can do
Yeah.
more. How is that
Right.
possible?
How?
Right.
Yeah. And think and more thinking time, right? So stop doing so much work, think more, you'll actually end up doing more work.
Yeah. And you know what? So I used to think it was counterintuitive too, but that's because I was using time as a measure of value. And when I stopped using time as my measure of value and started using impact,
Yeah.
energy,
Yeah.
effort, right, as the
Yeah.
measure of value, what you realize is either you're working for time or time's working for you. And so to me, I wake up, I'm bright-eyed, I'm bushy-tailed, I do have a schedule, it's very fluid, but I go, right? From the second I wake up, I go, 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 go. And I love it. And I've got, you know, an hour of CrossFit 3 times a week in there. I mean, I'm not skimping on things. I'm not skimping on social time. I'm not skimping on self-care, but I am very intentional about making time work for me. And I know that that investment that I make in myself by giving myself a couple hours extra in bed to make sure I get restful, restorative sleep, and that couple probably I could do 2 20-minute sessions a day, okay, of mindfulness and silence. And I build in more if I can, but sometimes my days are busy. That time pays back in dividends in my ability to focus, my ability to, be motivated and get things done. You have to remember serotonin and dopamine, they're not only mood boosters, those are the things that help you execute tasks. Those are the things that help you bring projects to fruition. Those are the things, a lack of those things are where apathy comes from, and that inability to finish what you start. When I didn't have enough of that in my life because I wasn't spending enough time outside, I wasn't spending enough time thinking, I wasn't spending enough time sleeping, because the biochemistry of your brain, it rebalances when we're asleep. And if we've got a stressful day, with everybody in America, I think does have, whether it's real stress or perceived stress, the body doesn't know the difference. Even if you're watching a scary movie, that stress that you're feeling in your body, that's real, right? And our body's dumping adrenaline, and that's turning into cortisol. And cortisol is not bad. It's absolutely necessary, but too much cortisol, right, can disrupt the biochemistry of your brain, and it can make you see the world kind of in a negative way and make you think that things are terrible and where's the hope, you know. And when we sleep, if we're having truly restful and restorative sleep during our sleep cycle, that biochemistry of the brain rebalances, right? And we wake up and we feel good again. And we feel like, oh, that you feel better after you sleep on it. Yeah, well, if your body's recovering correctly, right? If you're not getting enough sleep, that's not happening. And then there's some other things that you can do, like, pour alcohol all over yourself, which also can disrupt the biochemistry of your brain and make your life very complicated. But, so it's the ability to follow through and get something done is directly related to the amount of dopamine in your system. So if you're not doing things intentionally to make sure that those dopamine levels are being nurtured and restored, you're doing more harm than good.
That's so good. That's so good. Thanks, Laura. That's I've learned a bit in listening. I've been reminded a lot. Love listening to you. You're so knowledgeable on topics that are so important for all of us, whether it's leadership or it's self-care, and really it's all connected in that sense.
Yeah,
so thanks for sharing some of that with me and with our listeners as well. Really appreciate it, and appreciate your time.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here. Thanks, Jamie.
Thanks, Laura. Take care.